全国の皆様、こんにちは。本日もご覧いただきまして誠にありがとうございます。エンパワードジャパン実行委員会の宮崎です。まず引き続き、コロナウイルス感染拡大により全国で影響の出ている皆様にお見舞いを申し上げます。本プロジェクトですが、働き方や、学び方、教え方であったり、そういったニューノーマルの確立に向けて、全国の皆様に少しでも有益な情報をお届けすることを目的として継続的な活動を続けております。現時点までで57のコンテンツ、今回は58個目のコンテンツとなります。70団体の協力で進めておりますが、引き続き動画であったり、資料をご覧いただけますので、ぜひご活用をお願いいたします。本日は、グローバルな、講師の方に、ご登壇をお願いしたいと思っております。本日の講師に関しましては、ウトカーシ・アミトバさん、ネットワークキャピタルという、全国、全世界でですね、10万人以上の、コミュニティを形成しておりまして、キャリア構築に必要な情報であったり、メンタリングであったり、そういったネットワークを提供しているグローバルな団体となります。本日はその、創業者でもあり、CEO を務めておられる、ウトカーシさんに、ご登壇をお願いしたいと思います。Okay then, so today we will be conducting our presentation in English. So today's lecture will be from Mr. Utkarsh Amituba. So Utkarsh-san, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great to see you again.
It's a pleasure, Shota.
So I would like to first make a quick introduction of your background and career history. Then we would like to move right into your presentation.
Yeah.
Okay. So Utkarsh is the founder and CEO of Network Capital, one of the world's largest career intelligence communities. He's a writer at Harvard Business Review, Chevening Fellow at University of Oxford, and a World Economic Forum global shaper who represented the community at the annual meeting in Davos. His new book, The Seductive Illusion of Hard Work, has become a global bestseller. Of course, I have it as well.
Thank you.
He also writes for Mint, Economic Times, and World Economic Forum. Utkarsh graduated with an MBA from INSEAD Business School, where he was recognized as the Andy Burgess Scholar for Social Entrepreneurship. He is also the torchbearer of Ashoka University's Young India Fellowship. His work experience includes Microsoft, Harley-Davidson Motor Company, and Teach for India. Utkarsh is a Resina Fellow and the recipient of the Inc. Fellowship. Utkarsh is also a trained actor and played Major Metcalf in one of the world's longest running plays. He loves to travel and has been to more than 80 countries. Wow, what an amazing background and history from you, and great friends back from Microsoft, and it's great to have you today.
Always it's great to connect with friends from Microsoft.
Yes, and where are you at this moment?
I'm in London right now, Shota.
How is the pandemic situation in London?
So the vaccination drives have been going well. People are now out and about on the streets. But life isn't fully back to normal in that offices haven't fully opened up. There are lots of logistical delays that are happening, say in the postal services and what have you. But you do see in the British summer a lot of people out in the gardens and trying to soak up the sun and really, reignite that lost connection that many of us faced in the past year and a half. So that is the situation here.
I see. I believe there are in Japan as well, but the value or towards like career or like work style or like learning style, I think these kind of things has transformed a lot through this pandemic and the toughness we have been all facing.
Yeah.
Love to hear your through your presentation on your recent work and also about your thoughts, especially in Japan as well. We are not back to the normal yet. Our third state of emergency has been canceled recently, but still there's pretty much high number of infections reported every day. And one challenge is the remote working environment has not been progressed that well. Probably it's less than 30% at this moment. So we would love your thoughts on, from your global perspective, about how work style is shifting and transforming through this pandemic, and not negatively, but if you can just provide us some guidance and vision about how our work style or lifestyle will be changing throughout this next upcoming years.
Yeah. Thank you, Shota, for this incredible opportunity. Japan is a country dear to my heart. And of course, it's always good to connect with friends and colleagues from there. I've been studying work and careers for a very long time, whether it's through Network Capital or through my writing. Even at Microsoft, a lot of my work focused on understanding what are the new currents that are coming to fore in this space. So if you look at the pandemic and the state that we are in today across the world, I don't think there is any going back to the normal. There will be a new normal that will be created in the post-pandemic era, where all aspects of our life, how we work, what we work on, who we choose to work with, the kind of communities that will serve people, all of these things are going through a tectonic shift. So if you look at how the world is shaping up, how does work get done? You have to start in schools and then take it up to the C-suite. So Network Capital essentially is a mentoring and career intelligence community. So first thing we are seeing is that whether it's a school student or a CEO, they are both experiencing, the need to redefine their meaning in life when it comes to their studies and work. So the pandemic has given people a lot to think about, which is why so many people have decided to take alternate paths, career paths. Many have quit their jobs, many have taken sabbaticals, many of them have actually tried to change the direction of their entire careers, because this was forced time away from what we thought of as normal. So meaning has changed. The second shift that I noticed in this year and still continued was that despite a lot of amazing digital tools that are available for collaboration, the remote working hasn't been so easy on both introverts and extroverts. It's not that introverts love physical disconnection and extroverts love being, in the middle of people every single minute. This pandemic changed a lot of, who people chose to associate with. So the immediate aftermath was that while productivity was taken care of, people could still sort of get work done. What they missed was connection and community. The hallway conversations, the serendipity that happens. So I like to have a term introduced in this talk called PS ratio, which is the productivity serendipity ratio. So if you look at the remote work environment, at least in the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of us aced our productivity, but it came at the cost of serendipity. The conferences stopped. We couldn't go to offices, the hallway conversations, the dinner chatter, and all of those things went away. So productivity was very high, but serendipity became very low, which resulted in burnout, mental health issues, lack of creativity, and so forth. And that was phase one. Phase two, and I call phase one panic working, where all of us were, introduced to a completely new situation, unfamiliar context, unfamiliar ideas. So we thought, okay, let's outwork the pandemic. We worked for 10 hours before, now we'll work for 15, 16 hours and see what happens. So that's the direction we went in. So once we panic worked and once we sort of, introduced us to longer working hours for the first couple of months in the pandemic, then we realized that, we are so exhausted and this pandemic doesn't seem to end. Every time you will hear the numbers going up and one country failing to achieve, the vaccinations in a certain order, the vaccine wasn't even there. So after panic working, exhaustion and mental fatigue set up, but meetings frequently increased and more people had the opportunity to, just reevaluate the entire ecosystem, so to speak. So this was phase two. Now, phase two people thought would end when people are vaccinated or when the summers are here, and all kinds of theories were propounded. But then basically the meeting frequency increased, conferences, everything became online. Students started learning everything on Microsoft Teams and other similar software, which is all great. But I think the aspect of innovation really happens when you change context. I remember many times when I spoke to you, Shota, I learned a lot about Japanese culture, public policy, how business and tech work in Japan. I would have never gotten an opportunity had you and I not gotten that meal in Singapore or in the US or wherever. And I think those cherished memories, people missed it. So this was phase 3. And just fast forward to today, where we are. Not much has changed. We are still at home. We are still, grappling between panic working, exhaustion, mental fatigue, lack of creativity. But there's also a silver lining because we have reevaluated the meaning of work and why we do what we do. A lot of us have emerged from the pandemic or are emerging from the pandemic with a lot more clarity about the 3 most important aspects of meaningful work, which in my opinion are autonomy, mastery, and purpose. This is derived from Daniel Pink's work, which I have referred to in my book as well. So autonomy, mastery, and purpose are 3 key elements of meaningful work, which are being redefined in this new work environment. There's another silver lining. Now, people have realized actually remote working and hybrid working is possible. It is possible for me to live in London or Delhi and work for a Japanese company which is operating out of San Francisco with most of its employees in Philippines. So this globalization that happened back in the day, which meant that people actually moving to different countries, resources moving to different, now work is totally distributed. At least it can be using tools like Teams and Outlook and other kinds of softwares that exist, which means that talent and opportunity don't need to be disconnected. The biggest silver lining, in my opinion, of this phase shift has been it is possible for somebody whose perhaps visa did not come through, whose H-1B didn't come through, couldn't get a visa to Japan, to actually live in a different city, still get the work done, and get paid in different kinds of denominations. There will be tax implications, and there are some policy issues to be figured out. But this talent opportunity mismatch needs to be bridged. And this pandemic has sort of put a forcing function. At least it has allowed people to see that. It gives me a lot of hope when companies call themselves remote first, which means that they care a lot about the output, not necessarily about the input. So my understanding of this hybrid work environment, where we will go down to some days in office, some days, working out of another place, is that it's here to stay. But you'll also see some companies basically become remote first. But it doesn't come at the cost of physical connection. They will meet, say, perhaps few times a year in high intensity summits, perhaps, 3 times a year for 7 days, where they really immerse, discuss strategy, get to know each other well. Because work is a lot more than just getting stuff out of the way. It is again about that intangible connection that happens when we truly immerse ourselves in the story of others. That's how great ideas build up. That's how people collaborate. And just want to conclude by talking about something that I have become really interested in the midst of the pandemic, and it connects to remote work as well. And I see it as the emergence of the passion economy or the creator economy, where, say, a manga comic maker in Japan can put up his work or her work on a digital channel, connect it with with some sort of a blockchain payment crypto mechanism, and get paid for it throughout the world. So 500 million people lost their jobs in the midst of the pandemic. 500 million people, and the numbers is increasing even more. These jobs are not coming back in the short term. So some of these people who've lost jobs have realized that, they can actually work for themselves. leverage digital tools, collaboration tools, and make a meaningful living doing so. So this beauty of achieving autonomy, mastery, and purpose, working on something that you're passionate about, perhaps it came at the cost of you losing your job in the middle of a pandemic, or you becoming redundant, or something of that sort. This is here to stay. So just to wrap up my perspective on this new work environment, there is no going back to normal. The new normal needs to take care of the PS ratio, the productivity serendipity ratio, so that we form meaningful connections, become innovative, and find autonomy, mastery, and purpose in our work. Then office has been traditionally a source of community as well, or high school has been a source of not just learning, but also becoming friends with people, getting to know each other better. This community aspect needs to be revived in this hybrid world, which we are going to see in the post-pandemic era. And as we try and take care of these communities, I think you will see an emergence of a lot more creators and passion economy enthusiasts who will build on the power of community, like we have done on Network Capital, and try and create our respective categories of one. I think that's my vision for the new normal in the post-pandemic world. Let's take this opportunity to bridge the talent opportunity mismatch. Life isn't likely to go back to the way it was in exact terms. There will be some similarities, but let's embrace this future with a sense of adventure and possibility. And I'm confident that together we can redefine what it means to work in the 21st century.
Thank you very much, Karshan. That is such an encouraging message. I think there are many more like more pessimistic to per se like perspective in such world, but I think it's really positive and important to see these things positively, which you actually just insisted from your comments. Just wanted your thoughts and I wanted to ask your questions on, but what I really enjoyed reading your book, and about you actually wrote about the passion economy in your book as well. And I also really loved your comments about the deep generalist So in such world, there are many people in Japan who think, especially in the young generation, like in the early stage of the studying, where he or she or that person, individual, does not have or see what that person is passionate about, or what kind of career they would like to develop in the future, especially in such a very how do you say, it's really hard to see the future at this moment, especially in such an economy. So how would you advise these younger generations about when they are trying to pursue their career for the future, what to study about?
Yeah, so Shota, Network Capital is a partner of Niti Aayog, which is Government of India's policy think tank. And through that, we support something called the Atal Innovation Mission, which provides mentorship to 2.5 million school children. And yesterday I was speaking with them. We have a summer school going on. And I was talking to them about essentially how do you discover your passion, and how do you act on it? And what does work in the 21st century build out a passion really look like? I think the answer isn't really in passion, because passion isn't something sitting inside you and you have to discover. That is part of it. I think the time has come in this era to really look at your curiosity and build out of your curiosity and see where it goes. Because everything which you can consider meaningful to one person in the world can create a viable economic opportunity for yourself. Internet allows small niches to scale. So in the passion economy, you don't need necessarily millions of followers or millions of paying customers. I like to call it just 1,000 true fans who really find your curiosity interesting and are willing to pay a small chunk of money to be able to support that. Network Capital is a subscription company. And as I wrote in the Harvard Business Review article, the mission that I set for myself, let's go and find the first 1,000 people who will be able to find value in the subscription that we put on. and see what happens. And the beauty on this passion economy is that if you start from curiosity, build for a minimum viable audience, just 1,000. If you can somehow get there and truly delight them, then these 1,000 people tell their friends tell other friends, and scale is a natural byproduct. Many times, passion economy folks get confused on two things. One is that, oh, I don't really know what my passion is. No problem. Find your curiosity. Passion will be a byproduct. You will discover it. And second is that they get too worried about scale. If I don't get 2 million subscribers by November, my life is over. No, your life is not over. You just need to be patient, believe in the power of compounding, and see what happens when you learn to delight 1,000 people at a time using digital tools in your creativity.
Thank you very much. I would like to jump into the questions of the remote working, which this Empower Japan is a project to support the remote working and the distance learning in Japan, Japanese society.
Yeah.
So when you commented about that, this pandemic proved that it is possible to hybrid work. And in Japan, this is a situation maybe similar in other parts of the world as well. But even during the highest peak of the pandemic, the remote working ratio was about 30%, less than 30% at the highest. And I think there's this gap between the remote working is possible versus willingness to remote work. Or on the other hand, maybe it's about reactiveness, using remote working as a means to react to the pandemic. But there are, I think, many people who are challenged or couldn't feel the productivity, or it's getting inefficient. It's better to work at workplace. These kind of situation is very visible in Japan, especially in the small and mid-market businesses in the regions. So from your perspective, how would you give some advice or messages to these people who are not being able to remote work, or who are hesitant to remote work under such pressure of the pandemic?
Yeah. Shota, my advice would be to either build a community or join a community. Look, Network Capital is a community first and a company later. That's how we've designed it. And it's a broader trend that it's coming up as well. GitHub is a community. LinkedIn is trying to build many communities. Microsoft is approaching developers as community members. So this trend of community is gaining traction. But I think it's not just relevant to businesses. We all crave connection. We all crave community. And that's something that has really been heard. Because community is also a way for you to fight loneliness and the breakdowns and challenges that happen, but it's also a source of new ideas. Small businesses, medium enterprises, one of the hardest things to do is to just keep going. And sometimes you need others to believe in you to really go down that path. And my advice to everyone would be, of course, join Network Capital and find other communities like Network Capital, or build one where you can say community of small business owners in tech or in automotive, whatever that is. And it doesn't need to be an existing one. The joy of building something that you truly care about from scratch is indescribable. And I'll see more and more people do that. It's the need of the hour. It'll have intangible advantages, but also a lot of business, quantifiable, tangible benefits that'll accrue.
I see. That is very true. Thank you very much. Just not being stuck into a small area, but actually liberate yourself with connecting to like a broader world, which can provide some advice. That's very helpful. Second question is very related to the first question, but in Japan, the most industry which are not being able to work remotely is the manufacturing industry, which is one of the highest employment it's created in Japan. So I've been speaking with the CEOs of some of the manufacturing companies, and their thoughts was that they recognize that there are some functions in these companies who can remote work, like HR, finance, who does not require any physical attendance in the office. But at the same time, there are people who are working in those factories or the power plants who must be there present. So according to the CEO, they say that there's this unfairness if there are people who are not being able to remote work versus who are people working from home. How would you advise these people, CEOs, about the fairness within such perspective of remote working versus not being able to remote work, considering the more bigger picture which is going on in Japan?
I think when it comes to sectors like manufacturing, automobiles, etc., there will be some essential workers who will today need to be on the shop floor, and organizations are honestly struggling to figure this out. Should there be a difference? Should they be paid an extra sum of money because they are taking more risk on behalf of their employers to partake of such a situation? Should they be given additional insurance? Should there be a different kinds of rewarding structure? Is it time to look at how we value what we value completely? For example, nurses in the pandemic, nurses aren't very well paid in most parts of the world, but they were so critical for us to emerge out of the pandemic. Similarly, for the manufacturing industry, the people on the shop floor, without them, literally the industry will suffer a lot. And in a very interesting way, in the 21st century, as we embrace digital tools and capitalism and efficiency, which is great, a little bit of it, no matter what your political spectrum, also reminds you of Karl Marx, who said that workers of the world unite. Now, I'm not saying making a case for unionization or anything, but it's important to actually look at both the essence of capitalism as outlined by Adam Smith and how it's being contextualized today. But perhaps there is merit in looking at universal basic services or universal basic income, perhaps greater worker rights, perhaps greater incentives. And if certain kinds of people absolutely can't work at home, I think it's time for large tech companies to also create new kinds of solutions. I think there's, of course, talk of 3D printing becoming mainstream or automation taking place, but then it becomes a question of what would the displaced people, what would the people who've been let go, what would they do? So again, like it brings us back to the initial part of the discussion. Work isn't just about getting stuff done. It is about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And I think sectors like manufacturing, automation will need to be, at the forefront when we come to these things.
Thank you very much. The final question I would like to ask you is about earning trust. So within this midst of pandemic and many things which lots of concerns in business-wise or like family, private life. So in this situation, and especially in this remote working or people who are not being able to meet physically face-to-face, I think there are many challenges, as you also mentioned, about this mental health. But at the same time, it's really hard, I think, for many people to build some new network and building trust. So just joining such community like Network Capital is a vital idea. At the same time, even though you join these communities, I think there's a lot of hints probably you are actually embracing and demonstrating yourself, working with many people who you have never been working with before, even. So in that case, how would you advise people to create relations or build a trust between each other in this remote working environment?
Trust is a really interesting concept because I think trust can build over time. And trust is also binary. Either you trust someone or you don't trust someone. So I think people should keep both things in mind. One, trust will build as time progresses, but you don't sort of trust somebody. You either trust them or you don't. But in this era, I think if you go back to the productivity serendipity ratio, the serendipity has been taken away. I think efficiency wise, many people have done well in the pandemic, but most people crave that serendipity, that random meeting. So trust builds when you discuss non-transactional stuff with sincerity. If every time you have a conversation, it is like a meeting, or we have to speak for 15 minutes, first 5 minutes we'll do this, then this, then this. I think that's not necessarily the way to build trust. That could be. But I think when we look at serendipity, I think the authenticity of conversations, focusing on other people, really asking how are people doing, caring about them, and start to think of life as beyond ourselves onto the other people is really important. There are digital tools that have come out. There are new kinds of companies, audio-first companies that are including Serendipity, like Racket, Clubhouse. Many other companies are getting into the space. They're essentially solving the serendipity problem. If you look at LinkedIn, I think there is some sort of a mentor matching service that they've come up with. Some aspect of it is serendipity. So embrace new relationships with the same sincerity as you did, with your cherished ones. Give relationships the time to build and nurture over a period of time, and don't approach new relationships as transactions or means to an end, because trust takes a while to build, and once it's broken, it doesn't really come back. So that would be my 2 cents.
I think that is super important. I think we sometimes misunderstand ourselves that because it's remote working, it's this difficult, or it's that difficult. But I think that in the old normal, when we were meeting each other face to face, I think this notion about building trust has been similar. It will take a course of time, but I think because it's remote working environment, we actually suddenly believe that it's because of the IT or it's because of the technology. But I think it's about the mindset in ourselves, how to build trust. And I think that was a great message you just pitched right now.
Thank you, Shota.
Thank you very much. Okay, then finally, we would like to close by asking your message to the audience who will be looking at this video after getting live, especially to these, first of all, the workers, employers, employees who are still suffering from this infections. The vaccination is in progress at this moment, but also the young generation in the future, universities, high school, middle school, elementary school. And this year, we had our Ministry of Education actually executed this policy, and the local governments, and 1 device per student has been realized, mainly in the elementary and the middle school. So they have access to technology now. So how would we truly appreciate if you can deliver your messages, encouragement, endorsement to these people in Japan?
Yeah. No, of course, I think, look, this has been a challenging year. This has been a year where a lot changed. I started the pandemic also panic working. I had, my Harvard Business Review article come out, my book come out, a lot of new things. But after a certain time, I realized that, I'm not really absorbing the most important event, perhaps, of my life. Sometimes you learn a lot from grief and pain. And I love to, quote Ray Dalio, who says, pain plus reflection equal to progress. We have suffered as individuals and as a country and as a world. And it's time to reflect on, how this happened and why. And then we can realize progress individually, collectively, globally, and for the entire society. I think children, workers, all of us have a role to play, an important one, in which we shape the new normal. Nobody else will decide for us. Nobody else is going to come from outside. It'll be coming from us. And we have to be active participants in how we shape the world. We can't just let the future happen to us and take it passively.
Thank you very much, Utkarsh. And it's great. Your message, I think, fits super well. And especially from, I think we share a common value, although we live in a complete different part of the world. And it's super encouraging. And hopefully we can get together and meet you in person again. But until then, I think we are super encouraged now.
Thank you so much, Shota. I really enjoyed this conversation. Talk to you soon. Take care, my friend.
Thank you very much and take care. Thank you.
Bye.
それでは本日、この動画をご覧いただきまして誠にありがとうございました。エンパードジャパン実行委員会としては引き続き、国内外の様々な講師の方々にお声掛けさせていただきまして、 少しでもこのテレワークであったり、遠隔授業はもちろんですけれども、この後のニューノーマルに向けてのメッセージをいただける講師の方々のご協力をお願いしていきたいと思っておりますので、ぜひこれからもエンパードジャパン実行委員会の動画および資料、取り組みをご覧いただければと思います。本日もご清聴いただきまして誠にありがとうございました。